Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Melissa Lawton and I'm the Archivist and Librarian here at the Museum of Northern Arizona. And I'm here with Mr. Joe Begay, who's going to introduce himself, and then we are going to take a look at some historic photos from the archives.
네, Joe Begay hier footage in schon leben 같이 마시치도 다시 강하죠 다시 치도 그래서 참마시나데.
Wonderful. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. So this first photograph we have here is from the Milton Snow collection, and he was a photographer on the Navajo Nation between the 1930s and the 1950s. And so what we're going to do for this program is just having Mr. Begay here kind of tell us what is happening and how it relates to the history and culture. So with that, I will turn it over.
Thank you. Here the three ladies and the two older ladies are, one is spinning the wool and one is threshing the corn, preparing for it to be grinded, and then the little girl is grinding corn. And it looks like that these ladies generally dress like this, kind of like on a daily basis. They didn't dress up just for this particular event. So back in that day, Navajo people used corn as the main food item. So corn was everything. So as the girl is grinding corn, she's also observing at the same time what mom is doing. And so they learned the process early on, and the importance of corn, the different ways that the cornmeal is done. And another thing that I've observed in this photo is a lot of times nowadays when young girls are asked to grind, they kind of sit back and not have a lot of weight on the grinding. So, but this little girl has her shoulders and all the weight up on the grinder. So that's the way to weave, and just kind of getting off your seat and have total weight into it. So this would be happening like for an hour, 2 hours. So it's a very strenuous on the leg muscles, back muscles, shoulders, arms, all the way down to the fingers. So a lot of she's doing pretty good. She has a good form. If I was there, I would probably see a nice rhythmic motion, and it seems like she's doing. She hasn't. This is not the first time that she's doing the grinding. And the lady is threshing the corn, and so that's how it's done, either using a knife or if the corn is dry, then you get two corn and just kind of rub it on each other, one another, and you would remove the kernel in that way. And then the girl would be using the grinder to grind it, whether it's wet corn or pretty dry corn. So that's how if it's a wet corn, we prepare it for the kneel down break, which is baked underground. And if it's dry corn, then we gather it, put it away, put it in a bag, and save it for later use. And then the lady that's spinning the wool, she is also very observant of the two individuals as she's going about her business. And that was probably the most economic way that Navajo families supported themselves was weaving, and so one of the process before weaving is spinning the wool into equal size, width, and so it could be used in removing all the yarn that's not going to be, I guess, like lumping up. They'll remove them. So that's the whole purpose for spinning the wool. And that's probably the last part of the cleaning of the wool too.
Great. And so I've seen some questions about the photograph. This was taken, we're not sure where it was taken, but somewhere on the Navajo Nation. Probably in the 1940s is probably about the date of this photo. And would you say this is kind of just a snapshot of everyday
That's every
life?
day, and this was done outdoors because Hogans are probably like less than 10 feet in circumference. So, and then you had other things that were in there. So a lot of these activities were just done just outside the home, and so that to leave, to have plenty of space, workspace.
Wonderful. Are we ready for the next? Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll switch out for another photograph here. It's a little bit smaller. And this, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say this photograph is from the Earl Forrest collection. So he was a cowboy and a rancher who would have been moving cattle through the area in the early 1900s, between about 1905 and 1910. So just a little context. We're not sure where this is taken, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Navajo love horses, and what's special about this photo is if you look at the saddle, that is a Navajo-made saddle. And so that's pretty rare. Even nowadays, you can probably find it in museums far and wide. And like this past weekend, I found one in Cameron Trading Post. And then so the Navajo men made those, and there were a few makers, and mainly probably because the leather availability was scarce, and it takes a lot of work to work your own leather than just purchasing leather and making a saddle. So this is a Navajo traditional saddle, and Navajos use horses many ways, and we all know that Navajos also work closely with traders, and the traders would purchase horses and cattle, sheep. So with the cattle and horses, to move them to Winslow and Holbrook, get on the train to Chicago or where else, different places. So the Navajo people brought their own horses, and they helped the traders to move those cattle. So they kind of worked that off. Like sometimes they had a credit that they can't pay, and so the trader would just agree with them, if you take this herd to Holbrook, Winslow, and you're going to work off your credit in that way. So many ways that, but what I like about this photo too is notice the horse is very relaxed. So like the hind leg is cocked, and so a lot of times Navajos, there were two types of horse trainers. There were some Navajos that just broke horse, and that was just fighting with them. And then there were some other Navajos that tame horses. So those were two ways that the Navajos, as far as what I saw. And I myself really admire the Navajos that tame horses. And the horses are usually pretty relaxed and not too frightened of things. So when I see this horse, it kind of reminds me of that.
Like a good relationship between
Yeah.
the horse. Yeah, wonderful. Quite a few of these next photographs are from that same collection. This top one here says it's from 1929 near the Shiprock Agency on the San Juan River. And then this other one here is from 1908, really close to where we are in Flagstaff here in Coconino County. So I'll let you go ahead and...
Okay, so the one in Shiprock, the corral is right next to the river, it looks like. And so depending on where Navajos live, like in Shiprock, you don't have lots of trees, but you have a skinnier poplar tree and cottonwood trees. Whereas if you were observing a corral like elsewhere, look at Jiquay, Black Mesa, the corral will kind of tell you how the availability of materials. And whatever the case, Navajos always had corrals to depend on as far as managing land, managing handling a population of sheep, goats, and so since the sheep and goat can just mate any time, the Navajo people kind of made an effort to develop a season that they work with. So, and that's kind of what I see. Like there's a person in white who looks like he's wearing a necktie. Maybe he's the tour guide, and the other people are probably telling about how they raise sheep and what the just explain different things that's to the people.
Put up a couple of photos here. So again, these are from Earl Forest, just kind of showing different structures. And I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about them.
Okay, so the bottom photo, that's Hogan. We call that a female Hogan, Hoganamaza. And that's all dirt, all the way to the top. And so that's the female Hogan. That's Navajo live in it, and they also can have ceremonies in those. Back in the time of these photos, it was multi-use infrastructures, and nowadays if you see a Hogan, there's a big house next to it, so that means they're just using the Hogan for ceremonial purposes. And right next to it is a shade house. And again, Navajo a lot of times build shade house that is totally enclosed like this one, so they can use it during windy seasons. And then the top part, that's our male Hogan. So it looks like a teepee, all dirt. And they also have ceremonies in there, certain ceremonies. And so that's a male Hogan. We call it in Navajo. So both homes would face east. So always, you never build a Hogan facing any other direction. So unless if homes that are facing the entrance that face other directions were probably built by maybe community housing, and so, but Navajo themselves, they never built a home that would be exiting to any direction except east. Okay.
Okay. And is that mostly for, is there a reason for that, that they always face east?
It has to do with the story of the black world and all the way up to the present world, the four worlds. And they all had directions, and east is where as soon as you open the door, the sunlight comes in, and so and a lot of times the running and all those were done to the east. So, and according to the Navajo story, east is where life began.
Okay.
And to the west, that's where life ends, and to the west and up to the north. So that's the Navajo stories go in that way.
I see.
So that's why east is very significant of a beginning, new beginning. So every time you exit out the Hogan, it's a beginning.
I see. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to pull up another set of photos here that kind of show some more interior views here.
So these two photos are probably both taken in the shade house. And the top one, the two ladies, it seems like that's also a place where they sleep, maybe at night if it's very hot. And so on Navajo, that was the case because back in the baby boomer years, that's when I grew up, and we all couldn't fit into the Hogan, so some people would opt for sleeping outdoors in the shade house, and that was a good, I guess, extra building, an extension of the Hogan. And the bottom photo, the man is laying back and relaxing, and a lady there, it might be a spouse or another visitor, just sitting there. And when Navajo used to communicate, they communicated in that way. So that lady seems like she's avoiding grandpa, but that's how they talk. And so they kind of talk in their own way. And a lot of times there was expression shared, but they can communicate in this way too, not looking at each other, and they'll just be talking away. And so
in this top photo, is there significance here where they've built the platform up? Is that just for convenience, or is that kind of a utilitarian?
that is probably to avoid crawling creatures. So, and it's easier for the Navajo people to sit like elders. They want to sit with some height so they can stand up with ease instead of sitting all the way down. And so I believe that that's the reason why that's that way. And so sitting all the way on the ground, it takes a lot of effort just to stand up. And so
Right. So I'll go ahead and pull a couple more photos here. So kind of a lot happening in this one.
okay, and here the lady has a rug, weaving a rug behind her. So she is sitting away from the rug, probably for the photo. And she has kids. That's probably her kids. I can imagine myself when my mom and she had us kids, range of age. The oldest to the youngest was like 20 years, and so
Wow.
that was. And then there was at least more than 8, 9, or 10 children, offspring. So I guess that's why they call us baby boomers. And so a woman without children, a barren woman, would be totally isolated, and they feel pretty bad, and because they feel like they have nothing to contribute to life. And so the Navajo belief was the more children you had, the richer you were. So I'm sure the men that's walking away from us, that's probably one of the older sons, and so they're sitting under the shade, and so that shade looks like it's also used to hang some like blankets and sheepskin. At that time, Navajo used to bring in the sheepskin at night to sleep on early in the morning, since there was hardly any room. Each individual kid was responsible to take out their own sheepskin and throw it up on the to air out, and so that's how life was. And so that's and there's some stuff around them that might be leaves of some sort, it looks like. So they might be putting those up at some time. So the mommy, I guess, weaves under the shade. So.
And this next photo is from 1902, and you were saying how this has a really interesting story here with the rug that's on the loom.
So with this loom, what I see a little bit different than the current weavers is, if you notice, like if you've ever gone to like trading posts, for example, Cameron, you're going to see some weavers demonstrating how to weave all the way from start to finish. And they generally just keep weaving from bottom all the way to the top. And so the finished weave would be clear to the top. But this lady, her finished weave is in the middle. So it seems like she wove from the other side, the top side, and flipped the loom, and then she started weaving from the bottom side again. So right there, her finished weave is going to be in the middle. So I guess that's maybe that's just her style of weaving. So I know the only people that weave in that way are the people that weave circle rug, because the circle rug is usually put on wagon wheel, and so the weavers, they weave from the bottom side up and then just move the wheel around, and then they start from the other side, and the finish would be in the middle. So with this kind of loom, I've always seen top to bottom, so this was special to me, a little bit different.
That's really interesting, yeah. Kind of depends on the shape and the size of the weaving, yeah. So here we have kind of a lot of different things happening in this photo.
Okay, it looks like in this photo, the lady's fixing meal for some occasion going on in the background. So you see a man on the horse, and then there's fencing on the left-hand side. And it looks like the group of Navajo came together for some sort of an activity. It might be branding of animals, or it might be taking care of cornfield, and something that's done as a whole family. So in many occasions, Navajo people back in the olden days, what we call natural, it was just natural, it was not, so natural community, that's what I want. So natural community, meaning that only one clan group members live in that area. So that was the ladies that made that natural community. Like for example, it might be Bitterwater clan, and only the ladies are right there physically. And if you were born male, as soon as you're ready for marriage, then you were taken away to wherever you're going to be contributing to life. And so only the ladies were kept within that land, and So within a land, what happens throughout time is only one clan member is there, and that's kind of like a natural community. And so those communities tend to help one another. Like if they're going to shear sheep, back in the day we had like 300 sheep, and so to shear 300 sheep is impossible. But with this type of an effort coming together, that was kind of like putting some people to work, but then you had to feed them. So I guess that's what this lady's doing. And this is probably the only shade that they have. So looks like the lady and the 3 girls are taking a break. And so the rest are back to work as soon as they have something to eat. I guess everybody goes back to work.
That's great, yeah. All right, so the next couple of photos, I'm going to kind of put them out together, maybe side by side, so we can kind of see what's happening. Kind of 2 different views of the same activity happening here.
So this is a butchering taking place. So as the Navajo people, we all butcher the same way when we butcher sheep, goats, and even cattle. So there's not any other ways that we butcher. So you learn the steps. So the first step is to cut the head off and then skin it and hang it like the way it's hanging now, and then you would gut the animal and remove the intestine, and like the video that you see, the head is off and it's sitting right there, and right behind it looks like there's a sheepskin. We still do that even though we have more sanitary stuff that on our hands. We can still Navajo rather spread out sheepskin and with the wool on to the dirt, and the inside of the sheepskin faces up. So when we take out the guts, it's going to be pretty big, and we usually set it on the sheepskin, and then from there several ladies would start cleaning and emptying the waste and cleaning, washing it. And so that's basically how it's done. And it looks like there's a Anglo lady looking on, and there's a dog there. The dogs, the only thing that Navajos toss to the dogs are like maybe unwanted parts, which is very, very small portions of intestine to the end of intestine, maybe 2 inches of it and stuff like that. So other than that, everything is eaten and prepared.
Right. So utilizing every part of the animal,
Yes.
even during the process of processing the meat.
Yeah,
Still using
as
all those parts.
time is like they say a long time ago, even the sheepskin itself was eaten, and so but now that part we don't do anymore. And then the other part we don't do anymore is the feet. We used to eat them, but now we tend to just toss it, and that's probably along with small parts of the guts that the Navajo get rid of. And other than that, everything is eaten.
Mm-hmm. Get the most out of it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. Ready for the next set of photos here. Kind of showing some water and people. And so these photographs are from about 1943 or so. These ones here. So a couple different views of the same area.
These photos, the lady on this side, the left-hand side, what she has right there in front of her that she has her hands on, that's a well pump. So it has a handle, so as she's getting water, she needs to pump it, and as you're pumping it, you get drinking water. So back in the 1940s and 50s, those were installed by Navajo men who were trained how to dig wells and then prepare that. So those were basically developed where water table was pretty high, and so if the water table was a lot lower, then windmill was resorted. So they resorted to windmills. But this hand pump, the water table had to be high enough, and so in this time, the people that actually pumped the water, they drank it, and so it wasn't like for animals. It was first for human, and then if you needed water for animals, then somebody had to pump it for a long time to fill water troughs. And so then on the left-hand side, same photo. So I don't know if that particular looks like a big water stand.
Yeah.
Next to it, and then the kids are behind the kids. I think that's a water trough. So
yeah, because it looks like the pump is right there, so it would have gone right into that trough there. Nice. And would that have also kind of caught any extra water that got?
So any extra water that spilled, normally you had a small man-made dam that collected that. So when it first goes into the dam, it's kind of like murky. And as time goes by, then all the dirt settles underneath, and so then it's pure water, drinking water.
Right. So again, not wasting
anything,
water.
Yeah,
definitely. Wonderful. And I really love this next photo, actually. So this is another photo from the Milton Snow collection. This was probably taken more towards the 50s. And on the back it just says Government Works Event, and that's all we know from the caption. So
back in the 40s and 50s, that's when Navajos gathered for fun. And a lot of this occasion, the federal government sponsored was for the purpose of introducing Navajo to how to properly care for sheep, goats, cattle, horses, how to give them shots and what kind of medicine to give them. And so they had those types of presentations. And then in between presentations, the Navajo people, they started having fun. And this was part of it. And also another fun time was rodeo. So it was not like rodeo as we see it, but they would, several men would jump a wild horse, fight with it, wrestle with it, saddle it, and then one of them would jump on it and ride. So it was not 8-second ride, it was riding until you fell off. So a lot of stories. Navajos say, I've been a bronc rider, I rode until I lost my hair bun, and so this has always been a lot of Navajos activities, and so that slowly translated into Navajo fairs. So right now we have Navajo fairs in the summer. All the big towns in Navajo, they usually have fairs, but this was kind of like where the seed was planted.
And I've seen a lot of photos in the archives of specifically this kind of tug-of-war activity. Was that just maybe one of the more popular things to do?
I guess tug of war, just more involvement from everyone. And so the other one was foot races. So the sprint races, middle distances. Not a whole lot of distance, but I guess something that was done quickly. So that was, and we also hear that there was a Navajo wrestling too. So they also wrestle, and so with that, the first person that is taken down loses. So it's kind of like a takedown, showdown. So.
Yeah.
And so, as you can see, it looks like these men are really putting forth effort.
Yeah, they've really got their whole weight behind them, don't they? Yeah. That's great. So we've got one last photo here, and the caption on the back of this one, again from Milton Snow, says that this woman here is getting the help from an interpreter to be registered for sugar rations during World War II. So kind of a good jumping off point for this photo.
Yeah, so what the story that we hear about sugar ration and all the other food ration back in World War II was that the Navajo people, they really didn't have a need for a lot of food. Mainly what they were missing in their ingredient were sugar, salt, and some of the items that make food tasty. So, so lots of people went into at that time. They went to like trading posts and several locations that sponsored rationing. And here you see a Navajo person that's actually responsible for keeping records and probably telling them of the requirements. And then there's a Navajo lady, educated, so they both probably take turns and doing a presentation to the people how to use the food. And a lot of times the Navajo people, they were given food ration that they never seen. And so I used to see, even back in the 1960s, they used to show Navajo how to prepare different food as they receive them. So, and then the nutritional value, that's always been the issue. So they give them all that information. And back in that time, up to about 1960s, late 60s, Navajo women all wore blankets. Wherever they went, it was a blanket and a scarf. And my mom used to sleep with a scarf. They never leave the house without a scarf. So, and then blanket too. It was just a thing. And the men, they all dress cowboy hat, and boots and vests, and so they really dress up and they go out to these gatherings.
Yeah, this photo is really interesting because you can kind of see the distinction, because you have people dressed very traditionally and then the younger people maybe a little bit less so. Yeah.
So that was the case up till like a couple of years. And the people that are dressed in this fashion are slowly disappearing. So right now, if you go into a home, your dad, your grandma, grandpa's dresses like you. So there's not really a whole lot of difference.
Not that distinction quite so much anymore. Well, that's great. Well, we really appreciate you joining us and spending time and taking the time to tell us, you know, what you see in these photos. As an archivist, I love hearing what other people see because I don't always know what I'm looking at. So I really appreciate your time today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you guys.